I have a friend named Katrina who's a pastor up in Delaware. And we've been friends since seminary, fast friends because we helped each other get through seminary, and that tends to draw you together. And Katrina, like me, went to seminary late. She had a career before she went to seminary, and as part of her experiences with that career, she had the chance to spend some time in Ghana, that country in Africa that's in sub-Saharan Africa down by the equator. And she was there for a couple months and got to stay at a school in one of the towns, one of the larger towns there, and then for a couple weeks got to be out in one of the villages, living with the villagers, getting to know village life. And this particular village that she was placed in, was about 12 miles down this dusty road there in Ghana. And she was living there with the villagers, 12 miles from the town. And in this village, that same town, 12 miles away, was the place that the villagers once a week would walk the 12 miles there so they could go to the market. They could bring the things that they had to sell at the market, like shea butter or baskets they'd made or bread that they'd baked, so they could sell the things that they had made, get some money, and then walk back the 12 miles to their village. Now, my friend Katrina is not necessarily one to take 12-mile walks at a moment's notice, but she wanted so much to be part of the village life that as she watched them walk off that first week she was there, heading for the town, she knew that if she got there, she wouldn't necessarily want to come back, and so she let them go and stayed behind. But she said that was really hard for her. But when it came time on the second week, as she'd gotten to know them and got to feel that rhythm of village life, one of the things that they say happens when you go to Africa is you discover your heart there. And they had become her people. And so she wanted more than anything else that second week to make that walk with them, the 12 miles into town, and to be with her people. She just wasn't sure she'd be able to make it. But those villagers, they told her she could. You can do it, they said. She wasn't quite so sure. And so today, on another dusty road, we have two disciples walking 7 miles to the town called Emmaus. It is Easter Day. Later in the afternoon, as the morning has been this whirlwind of so much happening, so many things that they didn't understand, so many unanswered questions. And we don't know who they are. Only one of them we get to hear a name. We don't know why they're going to Emmaus. Maybe it has just been too much, and like us, when so much swirls around us and there's so much that we need to process, it is impossible for us to process what we think and what we feel without each other, and so maybe they just needed to walk and talk and share what was on their mind and talk through all the things that had happened. We don't know why they go to Emmaus, but there they are, walking the 7 miles on a dusty road to a little town called Emmaus. And as they walk, they're talking, unpacking, thinking things through, remembering, trying to figure things out, just as we do. That process of sharing our burdens with each other and hearing what's going on, we share that same practice with them. And lo and behold, without them realizing it, Jesus has come alongside them. But they don't know that it's him. And Jesus asks them a very simple question as he's come walking up next to them. What are you talking about as you're walking along looking so sad? And it's interesting, that's the only moment in the whole gospel that we have today that the action stops. Everything else is on the way or running back to Jerusalem. Everything's happening, but here they stop and look sad. And then they fire back this sort of a snide question. So what? Are you the only one who doesn't know what's going on? Now, mind you, this is the Jesus they're talking about, that they're talking to, but they don't know it. And he simply says, what things? Think about that. Jesus is inviting them to share with him the burden that they're carrying. Because that is what we need. We need sometimes to be able to share that burden just by talking it through, just by being heard about what it is that we are carrying. Jesus offers them this ministry and leads their hearts gently, openly, where they most needed to go so that they can be healed. What things? As they begin to share with Jesus all of the mysteries and confusion that they have been feeling. So the second week came, and it came time to go to market, and Katrina, at the urging of her villagers there, was determined she could make it, or at least she was going to try. And they had come up with this plan that she thought had at least a vague chance that it might work. She was going to walk with them the 12 miles to town, and then she would stay there at the school that she had stayed at before, so that she could rest up, and then she'd take a Jeep back in the morning. She wasn't sure she'd be able to make it, but off they went. And she says as they started walking along the 12 miles on that road that she was so focused on keeping her feet moving that she didn't at first notice what was going on around her. That all the villagers that she was walking with had started taking each other's baskets and things and taking turn carrying things for each other so that they could each have a turn walking next to her. Talking with her in their broken English, sharing with her stories and laughing together, getting her talking so that she wouldn't be thinking about her feet and the 12 miles that were left to go. She says that she discovered that she was so into what they were saying and this experience of walking with them that she started joking back with them. And she jokingly would offer to carry their burdens, their baskets. And she says she even tried to take one and balance it on her head and carry it there the way that the other folks were doing. She says, don't do that. That's something you really have to know how to do. It did not go well. But she said that she became so focused on them and on this experience of being with them that she lost track of where she was on the road. And before she knew it, and without realizing it, here she was at the school where they were dropping her off. She says she was sunburnt. She says she was blistered. She said she was dirty and dusty and exhausted. But she says if they had asked, she would have turned around for them and walked on her knees all the way back. And she says, as they dropped her off at the school there, she cried. And so it's after unpacking real life, after talking through what's really going on, all of these things that have happened that morning and all of these mysteries and the things that they had seen and watched Jesus die and be buried and now this mystery, it's at that point that Jesus opens the Bible for them. And that is true for us too. We hear Jesus speak through Scripture best when we do that in the context of real life. We read the Bible so we can find ourselves in those stories. That's how the Bible comes to life for us. And we get shaped by the Bible, by those stories, as we encounter it in the middle of real life. But we need each other for that. We need, last night our confirmands gave their witness to the church. And a couple of them talked about things they talked about with their mentors about reading the Bible. And they said, we learned that we need each other when we read the Bible. We need to have our community with us, even and especially folks that disagree with us, have a different opinion than us. Or they talked about as we take the Bible and it sits with us and we sit with it, it starts to shape who we are. always when we're with each other. And so after hearing and giving them the chance to share what's really going on, Jesus starts to unpack the Bible for the disciples there. And he starts at the beginning. He starts with Moses, and he goes through all the prophets, and he helps them understand. No, you don't understand. Everything that's going on now has a place in the Bible, and the Bible has a place. And he helped them to see it as they're going through. And then it was evening, and it was time for supper, and they called him to stay and offered him the gift, the honor of saying the prayers and breaking the bread, and it was him. And they discovered that Jesus had been with them all along. That it was Jesus in the burning of their hearts, and Jesus in the unpacking of Scripture, and Jesus as they found themselves in Scripture, and it was Jesus at supper, and it was Jesus with them the whole time. And in fact, they were so moved to discover Jesus with them on the way that they ran the whole way back. Now it was night, and that's when the wild animals came out. And that's when the bandits were out. They shouldn't have been doing this. But Jesus was with them, had been there all along, and they couldn't wait to go unpack this with their friends. So Katrina said that when she got to the school and they gave her a room and she collapsed there onto the bed, and she was there with her feet aching and her muscles twitching, and she started to reflect on what happened. And she says, I never expected this. She said, I always thought that the point of a long walk like that or a journey, an experience like that, is what happens at the end, but she says it really wasn't. What mattered most was what happened on the way. She says, I was with my people. She said, and they were showing me Jesus in their words, in their actions, in their stories, by inviting me into their ordinary life. I discovered that Jesus was with us the whole way. That whole journey, Jesus with us all along the way.